All right, everyone, it's time to talk about Saudi Arabia because I am upset over the fact that we've struck a major arms deal with the Saudi Arabians. Apparently, Jared Kushner was involved to try to get a more lucrative deal for them. On the political end, I can understand wanting to ingratiate yourself to a fairly major player in the world energy scene, but I'm generally uncomfortable with the idea of selling U.S. weaponry to a state that has nuclear weapons on short order from Pakistan, that's engaged in a war on its southern border with the nation of Yemen, has massacred civilians there. As far as this Trump bowing picture, I think you'll find that's a non-issue. The funny part is, of course, Trump coming out and saying, oh, you know, Obama would bow before the Saudi king. I would never do that. Now, he's not bowing here, but because it's a similar position, it is funny. And so I can understand why it goes viral. You know, it is a little bit humorous. But, you know, bending over because you're tall to receive a medal from somebody who's, you know, old and shorter than you isn't exactly a form of obeisance. So, again, a non-issue. As far as the arms deal goes, though, I am slightly concerned. I understand the economic end, too. Like, it's like, yes, U.S. arms firms, they need to make sales. We're going to strike arms deals, sell this stuff. It is a major source of income for the United States. So selling weapons is one of our main sources of income at this point. We sell weapons to half the world. That may not, in and of itself, be a major problem for me. But my goodness, they're actively involved in combat to their south in Yemen. There's number one. Number two, the Saudis are not really, strictly speaking, our ally at all, and haven't been for quite some time. They're a fair-weathered friend. They want to buy stuff from us. That's great for us. It's apparently great for them. They're selling us, you know, oil. Okay, that's great for them. It's, you know, okay for us, I guess. It's more stable than buying oil from, like, Iraq or something. That's okay. Or the Iranians, or at this point, even Venezuela. But do we really need to be, again, doing this sort of thing where we're selling weapons to a regime that has pissed off a number of its neighbors? Yemen, okay, they're pissed off. At least the Houthi people there, they're pissed. They're no friend to Assad, who's trying to stop ISIS. And Saudi Arabia, there's every reason to believe that the Saudis, with all of that oil money, that the House of Saud is the primary sponsor of ISIS in the world. So why the hell would you want to sell them weapons? Now, the one thing I will say in their defense as a state, not as a theocratic entity or human rights, pariah or anything like that. One thing I will say, the Saudis are good at keeping their weapons within their own borders and using them for their own purposes. I don't think they're going to turn around and do what some groups like the FSA would do and sell them or give them to ISIS. But it still makes me uncomfortable. It also, I think, inflames things potentially with the Russians, because then they're going to have further involvement in propping up Iran. They've already given them significant anti-air capabilities. They've exported some of those systems as well to Syria, and they'll be under pressure to do more. Now, we can supply infinitely more weaponry to infinitely more states than Russia can, but at what cost? We've had this problem over and over. Overall, because of our enormous economy and because of all the high tech and shit that we have huge military budget, lots of contractors, make money hand over fist. We sell last generation weapons to basically anybody. We sell even older weapons to literally anybody. We sell top of the line new systems to our closer allies and other states that we sort of pick and choose based on whether it benefits us or not. And that's all great. Yeah, you can outmaneuver the Russians. We also outmaneuvered them in the 80s in Afghanistan, and look at what happened. Then you get Osama, then you get the Mujahideen turning into, like, Taliban Al-Qaeda fighters, and you lay waste to that region, and then those same weapons, they just go flowing back out to other militias so that they can take more land elsewhere. It's a crazy idea. The arms dealing, it certainly helps our economy. And as a jobs and money president, Trump could do worse. But then there's also the foreign policy aspect that people voted for Trump for, one of those things being we don't want more proxy wars. And this makes people feel uncomfortable. It makes us, I think it makes people, rightfully so, feel like we're adding to the fire in Yemen. We're adding to problems in Syria. We'd had that convoy strike. We had the strike on their air base. There are problems in Iraq. The whole region's already inflamed. Pumping more weapons into it is probably not going to help things. And especially when you're talking about a deal that's over $100 billion of actual weaponry. Can you imagine all the weapons that buys? That's larger than the 10-year military budget of a lot of even first world states. You look at some of these smaller European states, they could never buy a fraction of that amount. That's probably, how many states have a yearly military budget less than $100 billion? It's most of the countries in the world. It's a huge amount of weaponry that we just sold Saudi Arabia. So all well and good for the U.S. firms making money off that. And then that adds to the economy, it creates jobs and so forth. But again, at what cost? And is Saudi Arabia really stable anyway? As energy begins to decline in importance in the Middle East, the U.S., because of fracking green energy, is weaning itself off fossil fuel. China has made rather large gains as far as making sure a proportion of its energy is solar and wind. Russia's diversifying. They're getting out of the game. What's going to happen to these states that were pumping full of high-tech weaponry when their energy sales begin to decline further? They're already making less money because of the price collapse. And that's not going to go away, because anytime the price rises, we pump more of it out of the ground. We're the ones doing that, by the way. The Middle East is double screwed. We screwed it first by invading half their countries, bombing things. Now we're screwing them by generating our own energy and even selling it to our neighbors. In partnership with the Canadians and with Mexico, North America is sort of the future of energy production in this world, not the Middle East. Not the middle of some forsaken desert with some ruins and maybe a camel wandering around. They're no longer going to be the gem of the world when it comes to producing the declining amount of fossil fuel necessary to power the world economy. We've got the coal. China also has coal. Russia has coal. We've all got oil. Nigeria now has a significant amount of oil. Venezuela has the lion's share of the entire world. It's not the Middle East. They're going to be left behind. The Saudis are already having to make investment. They're doing what the Venezuelans didn't. They realize that it's going to be problematic to be like oil monoculture mode in the future, so they're investing in other parts of their infrastructure to generate other parts to their economy so they can survive the transition. Venezuela, of course, never did, and they were already too weak, and now they're flattened under the foot of the so-called free market of the world oil trade. I'm not sure that I feel comfortable selling this much to Saudi Arabia. Bowing aside, because that's, again, a non-issue, it seems like a slightly bad idea. I think we're going to piss off Syria and the Iraqi authorities and the Iranians, maybe some other states too. I think it's undue. It's not the time to be announcing such large deals. If you want to help the U.S. economy, instead of pumping it full of arms-dealing steroids, why don't you reform the tax code so we can all get back to business here domestically? That's one thing. A lot of people, when they were voting for Trump, they're like, yeah, America first, and we're going to look after our own shit, and fuck the rest of the world, essentially. Well, you can't do that while having your president primarily apparently focusing on selling weapons to other people and not even implementing his tax code. I understand stonewalling from Congress, but that's the one thing he could implement. With a few more bells and whistles on it, his tax plan would pass. And it'd be good for this country. It would really help our economy. I agree with him when he says 3-4% growth is possible. I agree with him on that, because it'll unfetter all the small and regional businesses. They'll be able to grow. Meanwhile, the multinational corporations will finally pay something in taxes, even if it's a monumentally lower overall rate. We're getting something out of them. You can use that for infrastructure. You can fill in the potholes. You can maintain the highways and the bridges without increasing any taxes on anybody else. It would be great. It'd be wonderful for our economy, and the middle class get some needed tax relief. That's what he should be doing, not going over to play around in Saudi Arabia. It's good to go for a diplomatic visit, you know, get your medal, talk, oh, this House of Saud, wonderful thing. And it was good that Melania Trump didn't wear a headscarf in Saudi Arabia. It would have been, he probably would have gotten impeached if he had forced his wife to wear a fucking headscarf to go see the Saudis, because every core fan he has would have abandoned him overnight. So that was a wise move on his part. But leave off the arms deal maneuvering, I think, for right now. If you want to sell like to South Korea, Japan, that's less of an issue, because they're not going to use them. Saudi Arabia, yeah, it's not exactly the most beloved regime among Trump fans, I would say. That's about all. Peace out.